Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Mad Capper, and this actually is another video on Raid Shadow Legends. As you can see here, many thanks to Boozer. I saw it on his channel. I wanted to put it out on mine as well, but MTG acquires PLARIUM, developer of #1 mobile RPG Raid Shadow Legends, and strengthens mobile gaming position. That is right. Plarium has been sold. Now, this is something that we kind of thought might happen, but never actually saw happening, and therefore kind of forgot that it was a thing out there. The reality is, this is a company that at some point said, hey, I'm going to paraphrase, we milked this cash cow dry. We want to go back to just our making games for casino lovers. We're looking at selling, and I thought they were trying to sell their whole Big Fish, or what I think it's called, or whatever their whole portfolio is of mobile division. But apparently, they just started with Plarium, and yeah. So now the developer of amazingly MTG owns Plarium. This just happened today or tomorrow, probably when you're watching this. But you see here, Modern Times Group, MTG, AB, has today signed an agreement with Aristocrat Leisure Limited to acquire 100% of Plarium Global Limited, the international studio behind the popular squad battler RPG Raid Shadow Legends, a highly successful evergreen cross-platform IP. The acquisition provides scale with multiple avenues to deliver synergies and adds a highly creative studio with a history of commercial success with strong momentum in 2024 to MTG's portfolio. It'll also substantially improve MTG's already strong cash flow generation. There's some interesting highlights we're going to go over here, and then we're going to talk about who MTG is and why they would want this. And here's the TLDR: they'd want it because it's an absolute banger of a game that they can add to their portfolio, which arguably would be their best title, and give them another avenue. And I'll talk more about that in a bit as we go through the different publishers that MTG already owns. But purchase price consideration of 620 million US, of which 20 million will be deferred to 2026. Consideration to be offset by the cash flow that will be generated between the start of Q4 2024 and until closing, which is expected to be Q1 2025, resulting in a final EV adjusted EBITDA of multiple below 4.5 times worth. To give you some context, I don't know, different industries I'm sure have different multipliers that they're willing to purchase on. 4.5 is standard in my industry, believe it or not. Between 4 and 5 is where we look for. For a little while, the pharmacy industry was going in the 10 direction, and the reality is you don't recoup your losses when you pay that much. I do find it a little bit higher than I would expect, but they are getting that adjusted based on whatever the company makes until closing, from now until closing, which is expected in the Q1 of 2025. So it says it'll be below 4.5 multiplier. Okay. But this is a sustained game. This isn't a game that's on the rise. This is the game that's on the maintain. But we'll get more into that down below as to what they actually did. The cool thing here is we're seeing some actual numbers, performance numbers. And while these are Plarium's performance numbers, we know what Mech Arena does. And we know that everyone else is basically negligible. So when you're talking about these, it's really 99% raid. So earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation. And I don't know what the A stands for. That, by the way, is EBITDA. So that's your earnings before all the final kind of, before everything else comes in and out at the end. Standard, apparently. Although not standard, because everyone has a slightly different way to calculate it, apparently. But so just that's where we're at. Crazy. Performance-based earnout structure of 30 million based on Raid Shadow Legends revenues for 2025, which MTG will book on the balance sheet. Sure. stretch earnout target of 170 million based on 2028 revenues, which will not be booked on the balance sheet. Basically, I guess they're just saying, look, they figure they'll make 30 million in the first year, and this is profit, cash flow profit, and then they up to 170 million on 2028 revenues based on 2028 revenues. So they are looking at this being a 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. So they're looking at earning 4 years worth of revenue out of this thing is kind of what they're looking at here, which is crazy. Plarium synergizes strongly with MTG, and the deal results in one of the strongest mid-core mobile gaming portfolios in the industry to power future organic growth. Plarium generated 613 million in revenues and 137 million in adjusted EBITDA and 110 million in free cash flow for the last 12-month period ended September 30th, 2024. So if you're wondering if the game was healthy, I just saw Hell Hades posted a video. Is the game healthy? Yeah, the last 12 months, they had revenues of 600 million. They had EBITDA, which is the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation. I don't know what the A is. What's the A? I had it open here. I had to look at it because I couldn't remember the A, and then I couldn't remember amortization. I literally opened it so that I could have to remember it, and the one letter I couldn't remember, I still couldn't remember. Anyway, so so $110 million in 12 months of cash flow. That means monies, not product, not stock options, that's money in the bank, ready to go. Crazy cash flow for last year. Obviously, the projection is over the next 4 years that might dwindle a bit. But I think, what did they say? They were looking at 170 million based on 2028 revenues. I don't know what their stretch earnout means. I'm not quite sure what that means. But, I mean, that's obviously not... That shows them thinking to grow it. Interesting. Is there anyone left? Or unless that's... I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the earnout is considered for these guys, but the combined group will have a total annual sales of in excess of 12 billion. I don't know, SEK 12 billion. SEK is probably Swedish. What is SEK? Let's look up SEK. I should have been more prepped for this. I know. I'm totally the Swedish, not now. To Canadian dollar. Let's go to the US dollar because it makes more sense. Let's go to the dollar. Because it makes more sense. Come on. You can't make up this gold. So they're saying 12 billion Swedish krona. Is that right? So that's like 1 billion US dollars, I think. I'm sure that's fine. I'm sure that's right. So these guys are worth $1 billion, over excess of $1 billion annual sales, of which, what was it? 613 million of those sales will have come from them. So half of their portfolio, I'm getting just round numbers, half of their portfolio is now Plarium, and half of their portfolio is everything else, which is probably, in my estimation, healthier than their where they're running in Plarium as itself, because it's really just it's just Raid and everything else. So I don't know, it's interesting. This is really interesting to me. They seem like a pretty healthy company. They've got 3 billion. They've got adjusted EBITDA of 3 billion, nearly doubling their EBITDA, and free cash flow. And the acquisition expected to be strongly EPS accretive. A lot of stuff here. They'll benefit from Plarium's tech and deep expertise in live ops. I don't know what that means. What live ops? Like their live arena? Live operations? Or live... I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure how they... Marketing and monetization. Definitely marketing and monetization. So they're like, okay, how do we make money like Plarium made money? Could be a bit of lightning in a bottle, but it could really help the whole portfolio to drive commercial synergies, et cetera, et cetera. The transaction will be financed with cash on hand, along with fully secured and committed financing totaling $460 million. So they're financing 460 of it, comprising of a mixed term loans with a 3+1 year tenor, and RCF facilities provided by DNB Bank ASA Sweden branch. Okay, so they got a big ass loan, so they got to make 460 million plus obviously more. They got to make 460 just to pay off the banks, plus they're kicking in the rest of the money. Wow, the transaction represents an indicative net debt combined EBITDA multiple of 1.9 when including financial debt, earnouts, and leasing, and indicative net financial leverage multiple of 1.1. Sure. There's more here. This is that you can read the rest of this. It's mtg.com. You'll see it. But let's click here. This is MTG. And what immediately jumps out at me is this is nothing. They're in a different waters now. Owning Plarium is a different world from what they have been in. Some of Plarium's other games, not Mech Arena, not Raid Shadow Legends, might synergize with one of their publishers, but for the most part, like, this does not look like anything that they've been playing with. They've got five different places that they have. Plus, they have the venture capital fund, which is really so. Okay, if you ever wonder what are they doing over at Fateless, they're trying to get this just for, like, this is what they would do, a buy and build strategy. I mean, maybe not these guys specifically. These guys might have a different idea of ownership than what Fateless wants, but this is the money they're going after from companies, right? The venture capitalist fund, where they throw money at games that are in development to see if one of them strikes, and away they go. Hey, hell, Hades, Simon, this might be, maybe, they have cash flow now, might be an idea. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about their portfolio of games. It's really interesting. Again, I'm just crazy. They also did buyback shares in week 44 of 24, November 5th. So they bought back shares, and then they did this acquisition. That's interesting. But let's talk about what it is. First of all, we talked about the venture capitalist fund. The VC fund is really just a pool of money that they set aside to help fund development of games for a percentage of ownership to hopefully strike the next Raid Shadow Legends. Their first one, Snowprint Studios, very League of Legends like, I would say. The very extended comic. I call it WoW graphics. Is that a fair thing to say? It feels like WoW graphics. That's the kind of style. Maybe even a little bit more cartoony. But they have a couple of different games under this. They have Warhammer Tactus, which is it's a turn-based tactical strategy game. They have Legend of Solgard. The world of Solgard is turning to winter, and creatures are trapped in ice crystals. Ragnarok, the end of the world, has started, and only Embla can fight it. So it's I don't know what type of game it is, but again, you see that real kind of League of Legends feel to it. It is the only thing I can. And then Rivengard. I think this one is. Oh, it's a collector game. Yeah, Rivengard's kind of a collector game. It looks like turn-based strategy as well, or maybe turret defense. It's hard to see. But that's a 3-1 by Snowprint. Next up, we have Play Simple. Again, you see a very familiar, I'm going to call this your Sims feel. But its featured games are more traditional get grandma playing games. That's what I think. They have a ton of them. Word Bingo is probably the most famous. I've played Word Bingo a ton once upon a time. They have Word Trip, Word Search, Crossword. They have Crossword Explorer, Tile Match, Jigsaw Puzzles. So that's those. I think I'm right when I say grandma games or family games or whatever you want to call. The next up, Kiwi Ninja, which Bloons TD Battles 2. I have no idea what Bloons is. It looks like some kind of like a battle royal type thing. But again, very very cartoony, very like I don't even know what's going on there. It's tower defense. Okay, so there you go. Tower defense game. Tower defense. I guess the TD should have tipped it off. And then it's just versions of that. So this has obviously had some popularity because really they have a whole lot of it. Of Bloons, Adventure Time, Tower Defense. So there's a lot of that. And then randomly SAS 4 Zombie Assault. It looks like it's a tower defense as well, but obviously trying to branch out in a more mature genre. And then we have Hutch, which the only one I can see is they have F1 Clash, complete and thrilling 1v1 race with the toughest rival race drivers from around the world. Okay. Obviously, if they're only doing one game, then that game must be doing well. It's not my genre by any means, but kind of neat. And then finally, they have the Inno games, which it has their, I think it's more traditional castle land builder games. Forge of Empires, I've definitely heard of. Heroes of History, I have not. Sunrise Village, I briefly saw, never played. This is kind of my wheel. It's not gonna lie to you. Tribal Wars 2, Grepolis, Rise of Cultures, Elvenar, and the West. They all look like the build-out games, like the Age. It's the Age of Empires, the old Age of Empires, maybe. It feels like that. It feels, and then of course the monetized mobile version of that. Is it going to make me try to play it? I don't actually want to play it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So those are actually really fun games. I don't think they quite generate the revenue, especially they're free. So I guess you can still pay to win on it. This has more of the cartoony look. Sunrise Village feels more like Forge of Empires. Tribal Wars feels a bit like a simplistic version of it's a battlefield. Yeah, total war maybe. Like just looking at some of the screenshots and stuff. Very interesting. So that's kind of where they are. That's their portfolio. I'm curious as to what you guys think. I'm just gonna leave it there. They bought Raid Shadow Legends. So what I would say is Raid Shadow Legends was in a cash cow mode. All that Plarium wanted to do, and Aristocrat, of course, is they just wanted to make money. I feel like there's going to be a slight alteration of expectations to maybe not just make money, but find a way to make money for their other titles. There's probably going to be some kind of very slight in-game, maybe to get free diamonds if you watch this sort of thing, try these out. I think they'll want to try to use that as a jumping platform for their other games. I think they really want to see how to create scale from a game. But mostly, I think they just want the money to be able to make more games. It feels like they think that they can get more than the money they paid for it out of it, or at the very least, maybe grow it to earn a little bit more money. Or at the end of the day, if you can get a 22% earning on something and you borrowed at 4% to get that 22%, it doesn't take a math wizard to know that the net increase is greater cash flow. It costs you in the short term, but if you can grow the product, or if you can scale the product past the expiration date. So if you think, for example, they said they were making about $110 million end of day in your hand, and they're going to be paying between 5 and 600 million, say 600 million. Do they need 6 years for that? Well, they're hoping to get a little bit more out of it. They hope that's going to boost their other items, so their break-even point might be 5 years, which is not unreasonable. So they're obviously going to want this game to last 5 years. at minimum, and then they're going to probably look at it, keep going after that. They might tighten up. This is the fear. I guess the other side of it is they're not as big a total company as Aristocrat is. Aristocrat had money. They had tons of money. They make. I can't tell you in the casinos how many times I see there, and then I play it every time, and I swear I actually go, oh, Aristocrat every time, just because, I blame them for all the money I spent in Raid and all the money I spent in their casino on one of their games. But I'm kind of a bit in shock. Now, my final thoughts, is this enough for me to come back to the game? No. I don't think so. They'd have to have a drastic change in their direction. And here's my thought, is if you're going to buy a game for $600 million, you're probably going to want to see that investment come back. So the blatant monetization of the game will not change. And maybe it will get worse if they don't see the money coming back. They owe $400 million to a bank, a group of banks, right? They need to pay that money back with interest. And so they're going to want to get their money out of this game, plus interest, plus extra. And also to bolster the rest of their portfolio, absolutely. But I would have preferred PLARIUM being able to step back and go into a state of, hey, let's make $60 million a year instead of $110 million a year, and let's really focus on really polishing those things that we kind of let fall by the wayside, and sometimes because they've already made the money. Like, PLARIUM owes Aristocrat nothing. I'm sure if you go back and see how much Aristocrat paid for PLARIUM, it wasn't $600 million. And even if it was, they made that already. They made $110 million. They probably did they make $110 million the first year? No. Second year, probably not. They probably spent through the third year with an additional marketing budget. They've obviously slowed down the marketing budget considerably, which means the revenues are starting to stabilize because they're decreasing. They're not growing. I'm guessing the revenue hasn't grown in 2 years by substantial amounts, but the margins have stayed strong because they just reduced the amount of advertising budget to compensate and keep it flat. I don't suspect this will change a whole lot on the day-to-day. I don't know if they'll step in. If anything, my fear is that they would step in on the negative. But I do like, in many respects, that this isn't a Chinese-based company, only because I feel like Chinese-based companies, and I shouldn't say this is a gross generalization, it's probably not true, but like if Tencent bought it, I would think Tencent's main goal would be to kick it up to Honkai level, or one of their absolutely obscene money making games, and that would scare me. Also, I do worry a little bit about data owned by Chinese. I'm playing Moonton's game, so I don't know why I'm even saying this. I guess it really doesn't matter. The fact that the important thing that matters is they do have a new owner. They have an owner that does see a 5-year future of theirs plus, at least 5-year future plus. So that's good news. What that means in game, I'm going to tell you, I suspect it won't mean a whole lot in game, but maybe it will. Maybe it will be a big deal. So let's find out. Let's enjoy the ride, and we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will put a commitment and focus on retention, which might bring me back to the game. I did love the game. I did love playing the game. I didn't love how the game was run. So if that changes, if they start making a kind of, we don't know how much of PLARIUM was PLARIUM and how much of PLARIUM was Aristocrat. So we're about to find out. We're about to find out if there's going to be positive or negative changes in the coming weeks and months. I'll be eagerly awaiting to hear what some of the Titans like Ash and El Hades have to say about this. Thanks to Boozer again for putting that video out so I saw it and was able to watch this myself. But please be kind, be safe, and as always, hey, we'll see you in the next video.